Hey, my boy.
Oh,
What's up? What's up, bro?
dude, I didn't expect the drip. What are you doing?
Hey, man, look, dog. It's not good
What?
enough, bro. It's not good enough, dude.
Crazy.
How are you doing, man?
And I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great, man. I'm great. Thank you for doing this. Like it's a really crazy time, and
Yeah.
it's crazy that we have to have this interview right like this. But I mean, we have to adapt to what's happening in the world and change with the time. So thank you for taking your time to have this
Nah,
conversation with me.
pleasure. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
Going through the most, man. I actually don't do interviews anymore. But with Size,
Yeah.
handsome, man. Come on.
Yeah, just by the way, I'm dressed by Not Good Enough, which is a brand that Lebo owns. So a shout out to the man. Let's start at the beginning, bro. So who are you? What do you do? And what's your MO? What's your mission?
Dude, who am I? That's a very good question. I struggle with that like on a constant basis, actually. Um, my name is Lebogang Mokgoko, and I'm the founder and creative director for Not Good Enough.
Yeah. It's so that's it. That's it. That's what you do.
That's it. Like,
Okay,
I'm,
cool.
I think we get too caught up with titles right now.
Mm, mm.
I think everybody is something, and we haven't really put in that those 10,000 hours. So my whole thing now is like, yo, man, I'm just the guy behind this thing, and I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Okay, cool. So as a guy behind the brand, what
Yeah.
do you do as a creative director? What is your input and what is your output in the same time?
In essence, man, Not Good Enough was like is a home for my ideas,
Yeah.
basically. Because before I started Not Good Enough, I was wearing a lot of hats. I was a photographer, I was a visual artist, I was part of the whole slash vibe. You know what I mean? And I needed to just find a place where I can house where all my creative outputs can come out. So as a creative director, I'm in charge of giving direction for the company. So everything that you see from the company, I have a hand in.
Yeah.
So everything from the things that you don't see even as well, because we're giving general direction as to where the company goes. So deciding which products we take on,
Mm.
which brands we work with, which individuals we invite to collaborate with, the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, cool. It seems like you do a lot, So
Yeah.
as a one-man team, as you explained, there's obviously a lot of pressure on your side. So how have you been able to deal with the pressure and run Not Good Enough the way you've been running it successfully?
I'm not sure about successfully because
I mean,
I'm
it's
also
successful because it's running,
yeah,
yeah,
I
it's off
get
the ground. So yeah.
you enough. But I'm just trying to find my feet, man. I've always been a fan of collaboration. So as much as I don't have people on a permanent basis working under me, but I'm consistently working with different individuals who I feel can help me achieve certain goals. I'm also working with various factories. I'm working with different companies as well to
Yeah.
help me with like loads that I can't carry. Um, just another example. I mean, now this month actually is actually our second year anniversary as Not Good Enough.
Oh,
So,
congratulations, bro.
man, trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? So I'm always working with different people from different fields to help me run the ship.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Going into the second anniversary of Not Good Enough, there
Yeah.
is a lot of turmoil in the world. There's a lot of change, and that also affects how you produce, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I want to know from you, how has the lockdown been? How has it been as a creator and as someone that runs a fashion brand?
I think before I can even answer that as a creative, I have to answer that as a person.
Yes, yes, yes.
I went through all the emotions like the first 3 months because I think like most people, 2020, we all had like various like visions in terms of what the year was going to be for us. It was
Mm,
supposed to be the year for a lot of people, because it being a start of the new decade, we had a lot of plans in terms of what we wanted to do for the year, and as such, we just had to accept that a lot of those plans had to be redundant in many ways. Um, so it really put us in a situation to really rethink, restructure, regroup, and try and figure out ways in which we can still be creative. Because I think what COVID has really shown us is that we were all moving super fast in this direction, which really wasn't the best way to move in many ways. A lot of the things that we were doing, we could have done better. A lot of the things that we were trying to achieve were not really as important as it was meant out to be. It's like I was talking with another friend, and we were talking about this idea of being too big to fail, and how even that idea is a little bit flawed. So
Yeah.
I think now we're looking at ways in which we can move forward in a more conservative way, in many ways, a more considered approach. So
Okay.
I don't see us doing a collection anytime soon. I think
Oh.
the world has enough clothes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I'm looking at ways to do more considered pieces. So thinking about, instead of doing, 5 jackets in a collection, how can we now take all those 5 ideas of the jacket and put it into one? Making garments that are multifunctional in some ways.
Okay. Okay. So is this the direction that you're taking now? And it's also a very drastic direction, considering the fact that that's how the brand makes money, and that's how it stays alive and relevant. So what goes what goes into this change? Like, what is added into the brand now, being since you're saying that you're not going to be doing collections anymore and all of that. So what are you adding to the brand that is going to substitute that element of showcasing, basically?
Yeah. Um, just to add to my points, it's not to say we're not going to do collections anymore, but I just don't
Mm,
see us doing it anytime soon. You
okay.
know, I think the reality of things is like a lot of brands now, or maybe before COVID-19,
Yeah,
we were moving in a way that's like pre-internet, and the reality is like the internet has really changed how people consume product. So as much as collections is a way for us to showcase and to really show our creativity, but we don't need to do 50 pieces for us to engage with an audience, is what I'm trying to get at. you know I think people are crying for content. People are crying for stories. People are crying for just more original ways in which they can consume clothing. That
yeah,
everybody's a brand now, but what really makes your brand different from the rest? So that's why I'm more leaning towards this idea of multi-purpose clothing. A garment that has more than one purpose. Finding ways in which to create something that doesn't necessarily need to be replaced in 3 6 months. You know what I mean?
mm,
So what people can expect from us is a more considered approach. We will still be releasing things. It's just now everything is going to move a lot slower, because also, this year has been also a drastic change for us in terms of production, because this
for
was
sure.
a year that we started working with factories, and things have been stuck. Things have been, I don't know, anyone who knows how intense it is to work with factories will understand what I'm trying to say. But now we're just looking into ways in where we don't need to produce with factories. We can produce things by ourselves.
Yeah. I also want to get into that conversation with the factories and CMTs. A lot of people online, especially on Twitter, have been saying that South African designers don't take the consumers seriously because the product does not match the value that is being asked from the consumer, like in terms of money, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to know from your perspective and your experience with these CMTs. How has your experience been with the CMTs, and what do you think needs to change from that perspective? And how can we, like, now, as a fashion industry, improve the quality? Because that seems to be the topic of discussion. You know what I mean? That seems to be the thing that people complain about the most.
That's a loaded question, and it's a
Um,
conversation. Yeah, like seriously, it's a
yeah,
loaded it's a question. It's a conversation I've been having with a lot of people actually,
yeah,
and this has been going on since like I don't know, maybe the past 4 years, maybe.
mm,
Um, but like I think we have to look at it in perspective. The reality of everything is that as an industry, okay, there's hardly an industry, but as an
yeah.
industry in South Africa, we're only 25 years old. And
Are we really? I mean,
think
there's
about
a
it, bro.
history that okay,
5 years
okay,
old, us working, together. You know what I mean?
okay,
Um, we can argue that yes, it's a little bit older, whatever, but the reality is, ever since we got our freedom, a lot of things have changed. A lot of companies have moved. It's a loaded. That's what I'm saying. It's a loaded question, right?
mm,
So what I'm trying to get at is, in those 25 years, we have come a long way. But anybody that's, observing the industry can see the potential that the industry has, and, the various, I don't know, loopholes that we still need to get like filled. So as someone that has had the opportunity to really get into the industry, I can understand as to why things are the way that they are. The main issue is that I don't think designers want to put out inferior quality. I
yeah,
think the reality is that production in the country is still not at a standard in which is acceptable, unfortunately. There's hardly any factory. Anybody that knows anything about producing knows it starts with the fabric. You
mm,
hardly have any textile mills. You know what I mean? A lot of the fabrics that you find in South Africa are imported. So those are just some of the things that desperately needs addressing because there's hardly any infrastructure. You look at, for instance, the fashion weeks. How many fashion weeks are there in the country? There should actually be one. We need to be speaking with a unified voice. Um, at the third part to that whole situation is us as consumers, we're still not at a point where, the cool thing is to wear local brands.
yeah,
So you find that designers, when they have to approach factories and, try and sample and try and make collections, they end up competing with spaces with retailers. And factories, they work with units, you know? So when you come there and you're trying to do 10, 20 units, it's hard for them to take you seriously. It's hard for them to stop an order of 500 and 1,000 units so they can
yeah,
do something original for you. So, like I said, it's one of those things that it will only change if people really start buying local product. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't complain about quality. They should. They have every right to.
yeah,
But don't complain if you're not buying. And
mm,
secondly, if you have bought and you are complaining, don't stop supporting the designers because the reality is that I think there's like 50 million people in the country. I can guarantee you, not 10% or 20% of the population is buying local brands. And until that happens, corporates won't want to get involved in the industry. Government doesn't even prioritize it. I mean, you look at countries like Europe, where the luxury sector contributes to like half of that country's economy, and
mm,
what that does. Because I think the main issue is that in South Africa, people still don't buy into ideas. So that's why creativity is so undervalued. That's why everything looks the same. That's why things are stale. There's only one designer at a time. And that needs to change because everybody knows how the creative sector in the industry, I mean, how many people are creative in the industry. But when it comes to the structure and the backing, that is still something that needs to be addressed.
okay. I think that's a good response to what I asked. It's a good response.
Yeah, just sorry to
Going,
cut you. Just
yeah,
you just made me think of something else as I was saying that is that I just want to give another example of this whole thing that people have to leave the country to get recognized.
mm,
That's a huge problem.
yeah,
That's something that needs to change. So if anybody's watching, just think about who's your local brand, like who's your favorite local designer and what's your favorite local brand, and ask yourself, why haven't you bought anything from them if you
From
have?
them, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, 100%, bro. And it's also a good thing that you mentioned that because um in order for an industry to develop, it needs to be supported by the people inside, right? I think it's also Jay-Z that said, no civilization is conquered from the outside, or something like that, which also speaks to what you're saying right now. And this leads me to my next question. Is it possible to achieve like high-end luxury in South Africa based on what you have said?
I think it is, but I mean, when you consider the rand, it's extremely expensive.
Okay.
And I'll put it to you also like this: you've got people that go to, I don't know, Sandton, Diamond Walk. I don't
Yeah.
want to mention brands, right?
Yeah, please
Uh,
don't.
easily spend 500K, but they
Okay.
don't want to spend 5K on a local designer. And then you talk about quality, you talk about luxury. What's going to happen now when a local designer has a garment for 50K and 100K? Who's going to buy that?
Mm.
That's the issue. That's what I'm saying, that it's like, before I got into the industry, I was pointing fingers at a lot of people in the industry. But as soon as I started, like, the company, and I started to really understand how the industry works, I got to understand that it starts with the consumer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask you. You don't have to answer any names, but just think of who's the biggest designer right now in the country. I can guarantee you they don't have a retail store.
Yeah.
So
They're
that
not.
means that designer doesn't really do 500 units of anything. And when you put that into perspective, it makes you see just how small we are as an industry.
Mm.
So I think it
So,
is possible, but the market has to exist, because
okay.
an industry can't be dependent on a handful of people. I see Lunga just mentioned Laduma, but how many Ladumas are there in the country?
Mm. I guess that's your point, that there isn't enough diversity in the design and the retail space,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And it seems like it's going to get crazier because of COVID-19, right? And I want to know from you as an emergent designer, how many or what things are going to change in the industry now, especially locally, because like you said, it's a young industry, and young industries are very vulnerable at this point. We're the ones that are in danger. So, what is going to happen to this industry that we have right now? Is it going to go away? Is it going to,
Now,
or what?
I think it's not as bad as people are making it out to be.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you look at the history of time, any pandemic, or not really, not even pandemic, but any crisis or any, I don't know, recession, whatever, there's
yeah,
always sort of opportunity. So,
mm,
in many ways, I was reading another article, and they were talking about how e-commerce and online shopping has now grown in South Africa. So, I think right now, brands that are active and that are engaging with their consumers right now in terms of the products that they're making and in terms of content that they're creating, there's a huge opportunity for them to grow right now. And
mm,
unfortunately, now at least we won't be too reliant on brands having to have retail stores in order for them to actually make money. So what I see changing is, I think people are going to be a lot more cautious about what they're buying. And hopefully that would mean also being cautious of the idea or the fact that, okay, out of all the things that I'm buying in the month, how many of them are actually local? You know,
yeah,
I think I think that is something that we can see slightly changing and slightly shifting, because even the conversation that we just had about the quality in terms of local brands, it was very important. That means people are considering the idea of buying local and
buy
supporting
local.
local. Yeah, so I think just moving forward, that's the change that we might just see. We might just see a lot more people wearing local brands, or at least being aware of local brands.
Okay, cool. Coming back to your brand, you mentioned that you were going into a multidimensional design ethos and design mentality. So what does this mean for now you selling, because you've predominantly sold online? So how are you going to recreate that business model for yourself then?
Fortunately for us, we're still like a small brand, so whatever changes that we make, it doesn't affect hundreds and thousands of people. You know, we're fortunate in that regard. So I've been fortunate also as well as a brand that, you know, we've always had an international appeal.
Okay.
So we're still going to do a lot of things online. This year, actually, we had planned on doing a lot of pop-ups and doing a lot more things physically. But like I said, that whole idea has had been now redundant. So I think it's about really creating a more engaging e-commerce
Yeah.
and being more original in terms of, or rather, finding new creative ways to produce content and engage with audiences, because more people are online. And I think it's about time. Even this whole idea of just shooting lookbooks, I think that also is a little bit outdated. I think that needs to change. Um, but it's something that we're trying to figure out. So if anybody's watching, is doing augmented like reality and shit like that, please hit me
Oh,
up.
is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Like I'm trying to get into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just finding the right people. And I've also learned to understand that everything is timing, you know? So
Mm.
just going through it right now, I don't just have to jump on any trend, but that's something that we're consciously thinking about doing and getting into moving forward.
Okay, cool. Great. I'm glad that you mentioned augmented reality, and that reminded me of the Fashion Week thing that happened earlier on in the year, where a designer from Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh, yeah.
created something that is reminiscent of a fashion walk kind of vibe, right? So now, what does this pandemic mean for Fashion Week in South Africa? Because it's already a dying part of the industry. Like,
Yeah.
it's not really celebrated. It's not um, really looked forward to, and people in the industry don't like Fashion Week in South Africa. So, what does
100%.
this mean? What does this mean for that whole business?
Look, man, to be fair, I don't have the answers. You know, funny enough, I was in conversation with one of the fashion weeks actually last week, and you know they are also in limbo in terms of what the future holds.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they will start embracing the internet. I think that's been the cry, you know. I think Fashion Week, especially in our country, hasn't been reflective of what necessarily, I don't want to say what's happening in the streets, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, get you, get you.
Been a connected experience in many ways.
Mm.
So I don't know if it'll die out, because I still think it's an important player in the industry. I think we do need Fashion Week.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of looking at how they can engage more people into actually being wanting to participate in that whole experience. I
Okay.
think it's been closed out for a lot of people, not intentionally, but like I said, because anybody that has been to Fashion Week knows that there's still a disconnect between people who are in the industry and people who aren't. So
Mm.
they need to just find a way in which they can connect more average, normal people who are not necessarily within the fashion space. I
Mm.
think that's what really needs to happen, because also um, not all the shows are actually packed out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Into none of them are really packed out like that. So I think they just need to find really creative ways in which they can engage a lot more people, and just making it a bit more accessible as well. So not everybody can go to Sanson, you know what I mean? So they just need to find a way in which they can connect with people on online basis.
Okay, cool. I understand you, and it also makes sense. This leads me to my next question then. So, how is Not Good Enough planning on infiltrating the online scene and making sure that the brand appeals to the target audience?
I could give away the juice, size.
No, just give us a gist of what you plan on doing as a
Um,
brand and all that.
look, look, everything is still trial and error at this point. You know, like I said, we're only 2 years in, and I don't have the budgets for to do a lot of the things that I want to do. Um, but one thing that I really want to focus on now, just moving forward, is creating the brand to be more representative of our community. So putting a lot more emphasis on community. That's why I was saying that, like, you know, this idea of creating collections is cool, but at the end of the day, it all needs to resonate with a group of people. So I've been fortunate enough that I've managed to have an audience, not have the biggest audience, rather, but still have an audience that's consuming our products. So it's really about creating product that can help aid with the community. So the only thing now is just because of the lack of physical presence, is like just trying to find a way to get all these people that have been consuming our product to come to one space. So that's what I'm saying, man. If anybody's doing 3D and like
We
all of
actually
that, hit me up, bro. Like,
there's actually a guy in the comments called Tav the Human Being.
yeah,
Yeah, he says he's gonna hit you up after this interview
man, please do.
to talk about the
Yes,
augmented reality stuff. So
yeah.
I mean that's going to be an exciting thing for the brand. And one last thing, what are you most excited about going into the new millennium, the new decade, the new decade, sorry, not the millennium, new decade. Yeah, just what are you excited about and what are you looking forward to doing?
Uh, I think that's a conversation that I can probably proper answer like at the end of this crisis.
Okay. I
Because,
mean, sorry to
because
burst your bubble, but like it's not gonna end.
I think it's just
Yeah.
obviously things will never be the same.
Yes, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
So my whole thing is like, like there's a lot of things that I was excited for, but like
Yeah.
now I'm a lot more, I don't know, cautious also as well.
Oh,
'Cause I've learned to understand that, like, because you know how it is, man. We look at trend reports and we're always looking at the world like 2 years ahead of time.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that whole way of moving is flawed now because we
Yeah, it's
can't,
all gone. Yeah.
yeah, we have to be open to being able to adapt to certain changes as they happen. So I think if there's one thing that I'm looking forward to is the unknown. I've
Mm,
learned to embrace the unknown. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
understanding that, look, I've got ideas and I've got a plan, but hey, it's like anything can happen type of thing. So I'm looking forward to 2, 3 years from now, looking back and just seeing what we've done because I'm moving now at a pace that it's allowing of change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know if that answers your
I
question,
mean,
but
it kind of does. Also want to know how you feel about this. So Lee Edelcourt, the trend analyst,
yeah.
was on Business of Fashion, and she said that this pandemic is an opportunity for the industry to reimagine itself, and it's also a blessing in disguise, basically. Um,
100,
yeah,
100%.
so she made it seem like it's not entirely a bad thing. It's a good thing for the most part. Like I mean, for the industry, for the environment, and all of those things. So how do you feel about that?
Um, I think the whole like restructuring of the industry, I think sometimes they just say it because I mean, I remember even when sustainability first came onto the scene, everybody was talking about how, you know what I mean? And we still yet to see
Yeah,
brands really, change in many ways because another thing that I think COVID has kind of showed me and us as a brand is that, even sustainability, it's not just about finding alternative fabrics and alternative inputs, but it's about having a sustainable business model. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So when you look at like all these, I don't know, publications and brands having to file for bankruptcy and close down, that's because they were not running in a business model that was actually sustainable. So I agree that, you know, it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that had to happen because I think too much importance was being placed on big brands. And we need to start getting back to basics in many ways and start looking at the little guys that are doing really cool things, because a lot of these big brands, in all honesty, haven't really been doing anything that's shifted culture for a while,
For a while,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them, in all honesty, could do with, like, you know, a good 2 to 3 years of us not really caring about what they're doing. I think people need to now get on Instagram, get on Facebook, just get on the net and really surf for really cool and innovative people that are doing creative shit right now. Especially right now with the whole idea of sustainability. There's a lot of cool brands that are doing some really interesting things. And I think people need to be a lot more aware of that right now. And I'm not saying boycott these people, but I'm just saying, like, just reshift your energy and look at other things and seeing alternative in terms of how the world also could be. Because I think that's another thing that COVID is showing us, is that we've been so used to the world one way, and that the reality is that there's actually another way of living.
And that was the wrong way of living.
I don't know about right or wrong, man. I'm all about positive vibes.
But I mean, also Mother Nature showing us that it was the wrong way. But yeah,
Yeah.
I totally get you. It's a valid point that you make. And one thing I want to know, because we're obviously both involved in like the cultural aspects of this thing, you know, we are content creators in our own right. So I want to know, what do you think is going to happen in the street culture environment of South Africa? Because the epicenter of the street scene is closed down. Brum is no longer Brum anymore because of the lockdown and the pandemic, right? So what's going to happen to that, and what do you see happening? And yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Um, how do I put it? Dude, I don't think people understand just how important like the online space is
Yeah,
and what that means. I like, as much as like things have closed down, but like, let's not make it seem as if like these kids are not popping on the gram and they're not
for
popping on
sure, for
Twitter.
sure, for sure. Yeah,
So I think what would what should happen actually. Let me not even talk about hypothetical things. I think what should happen is a lot of a lot of these kids need to come together for real, for real. Like, they really need to like embrace
yeah,
what's going on right now and really come up with some really mind blowing things, because I think there's an opportunity for them also to eat, because a lot of brands right now are not really equipped in terms of content creation, and they could use a lot of these kids to, you know, to create content. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
So what I see happening is a shift of, you know, being less about brand and being this more of like the online space, you know. So like what we're doing right now with the live, I think we need a lot more of these and like a lot more honest conversations about what's actually going on right
what's
now.
going on? Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And I think also these kids, man, they also need to start using their platforms in such a way that allows for them to make a living from what they're doing, you know. I think cool culture is cool, but like, let's actually get paid. Like, let's actually change our lives type of thing. You know what I mean? Let's
yeah,
not just go to this party and look cool, but like, let's actually have an impact on this thing, because in South Africa especially, we have this thing where a lot of the people that are making decisions in terms of what's
what's cool and
co-signed
what's not? Yeah,
are not people necessarily within the quote unquote culture. We need a lot more kids that are like involved in decision makings. And that can only happen as soon as these kids find ways to like come together and really like create some sort of like monopoly over like audiences and shit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it shouldn't be like fighting for bags amongst each other. They should literally be coming together, starting their own agencies and shit. You know what I mean?
There's enough for everyone, yeah.
Enough for everyone.
Yeah, this also reminds me of the thing that you did, the thing that we did actually with Jones. Shout out to Jones.
Hey,
Um,
Jones, man.
Gatekeepers. It speaks to
Right?
the dynamics of the culture, which was like a
How
crazy
long
time ago. It was like 4 years ago, which is crazy.
man, like people who were watching gotta fuck, man, and we didn't even document that shit properly, actually, man.
Yeah, yeah, which is crazy, man. But
Crazy.
I think what you're saying is speaking to the gatekeeper culture in South Africa, which essentially does not exist, but it exists in a weird way where people are now holding certain things ransom and they don't want to let go, you know. So it's very interesting that you say that, and I'm glad that you shed light on that part of the culture. Yeah, man, and I think that's it for from my side. It was a very insightful conversation. You
Yeah.
definitely a guy that knows a lot, and I always
Nah,
enjoyed
good at
I always
man.
enjoy chatting to you, man. I always enjoy chatting to you because you know what you're on about, and you have a clear vision of what you want to be and how you see things working, right? And I hope that the world and the universe sheds light on your path and what you're trying to do, and you becoming the pioneer that you already are. So yeah, man, thank you so much for that, and yeah,
Okay.
blessings
You
and
know what to
peace,
say.
love, and all those things.
You know what to say.
No, man, thank you so much, man. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you guys for joining. This is
100%.
Lebo, my boy. Shout out for the drip, the whole time. We looking good, man. Summer's around the corner, so yeah, we're gonna have a dope one. But thank you once again, and yeah, we'll chat soon, man. Peace.
All right, man. Stay blessed.